Thank you, everyone, for your patience, especially those of you online while you waited for us to handle some technical difficulties and gather everybody. I am very excited about this upcoming panel because it is always a joy to hear the student perspectives. And as wonderful as our experts were, I think that everyone here is also really interested in hearing from the students from our Korea America Student Conference and our Japan America Student Conference. So today we are going to hear student perspectives on artificial intelligence and the trilateral relationship. And we have 4 speakers here. And I would like to ask each of them just to briefly introduce yourself, your role with your conference, and your university. We'll start this way and go that way.
Hi, everyone. My name is Valerie Grau. I'm the American Chair of KASC 18, and I am currently a master's student at Indiana University Bloomington studying international studies and vocal performance.
Share your mic's on green.
Hello, my name is Somin Hwang, and I'm also participating KASC 18 as a marketing and recruitment chair, and I go to Ewha Women's University. I'm now studying political science and international relations, and also French there.
My name is Mayu Kitahara, and I'm the chair of Japanese side of Japan American Student Conference. And I go to University of Professional College of Arts and Tourism, and I major theater.
Hi, my name is Emile. I'm from the Japan America Student Conference as the American Executive Committee Secretary. I'm from Southern California. I go to UC Berkeley. I study data science and political science. And I'm the AAC leader for the Environmental Innovation and Entrepreneurship Roundtable.
All right, thank you all so much for introducing yourself. So each of the students have prepared a short presentation on the research that they've done so far. So we will go in the order that the slides are in, which I'm not sure what order they're in, but it looks like the American Executive Committee for JASC will begin. And after each of the students has given their brief presentations, I will moderate a short discussion and then we'll take questions from the audience. So Emile, please go ahead. And Laura will be controlling your slides. So just say next slide when you need to go to the next slide.
Got it. Thank you. All right. So we'll be presenting on American perspectives on AI from the American Executive Committee from JASC. Yeah, next slide. Thank you. Yeah, so we're going to start with AI in elections and voter confidence. These are kind of some examples of or ways that AI has kind of been used in the recent political sphere in 2024 and before. So we found that the majority of Americans feel that big tech should do more to prevent disinformation. There is an overall decline in confidence in big tech. Older people, older individuals are generally more concerned about AI interference in the election. However, we do not see from studies conducted that there was any evidence that there was mass persuasion of any kind in the U.S. election. What is more likely to happen, other than affecting the outcome of the election, is that these tactics by Russian, Iranian, Chinese state actors, non-state actors, and domestic actors from different parties more likely used misinformation tactics to kind of increase the division within American society and American politics. So that kind of put us into the state that we saw today, to sow discord among Americans. Something that we kind of noted is that although misinformation actors did use AI to enhance their misinformation, MIT and some other organizations did find that AI did not have a significant impact, as we said, on the outcome of the election. So that's some things to note. There is also an idea of some Americans have more of an idea or more of a concern that AI played a bigger role than it is, and are now kind of doubting truthful and accurate factual statements more often because of the fear surrounding AI. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we're also looking at federal AI policy and goals. So we can kind of look at kind of the differences in how the Biden administration and the Trump administration kind of look at AI policy. We can look at the Trump administration from 2016, which was kind of more focused on developing AI, especially since it hadn't had the explosion that it did, especially with ChatGPT yet. But the Biden administration kind of had a lot more regulation. A key fact to note is the October 2023 AI Regulation Executive Order, which is focused on creating ethical regulations that did kind of limit, maybe in some people's opinion, the development of AI, in particular certain countries, such as South Korea, may have reacted negatively to those regulations. We also saw that the US is kind of focused on education and development, training mid to senior level officials and experts in AI education, AI ethics, and regulation. The US generally wants to position itself as the leader of AI innovation. I personally think that's true for both the Trump and Biden administration. However, the Trump administration seems more likely to want to roll back AI regulations imposed by the Biden administration in favor of creating a more free market for developing AI within the US. The next slide, please. Right, so I'm just going to talk about AI in education and AI in the workforce really quickly. So we note that a quarter of US teachers say AI tools do more harm than good in K-12. And personally, as someone who didn't really have AI tools in K-12, but do have them in college, I personally agree with that statement. Something to note is that in fall 2023, 18% of teachers used AI in classrooms, although it's likely larger now. Another thing to note is that there are economic barriers in AI participation. Some schools there's two aspects, so cheating with AI, obviously, but also using AI in education, teaching children about AI. Certain schools have more funding and more resources and more teachers with knowledge to do that than others. And as AI grows and the job market changes, it is more important to integrate AI learning and understanding into schools so that students can understand the issues and ethical regulations within models and data. And there is a widening economic disparity between schools who have those programs and schools who don't. Regarding workforce, AI does promote equitable distribution of knowledge and skills. However, we do find that white-collar workers are most likely to be affected by AI implementation. Outside jobs are right now, they're not really looked at as being affected by AI, although that might be change soon with the development of Tesla robots and things like that that are generally dedicated to doing more outdoor physical labor work. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is some queries I ran, and I ran them both for a difference in opinion in Japan, and then on the next slide, you'll see a difference in opinion in Korea. So a contentious issue is kind of Korean comfort women and how they were, and what happened essentially within the US and within Japan. So something interesting, Microsoft Copilot, which is what I used here, uses English sources and Japanese sources if you ask it in Japanese. And so you can see here that if you ask what are Korean comfort women in English, it will cite English sources which come very much from the American population's perspective, that focus on World War II and kind of Japanese atrocities. Whereas if you ask in Japanese, with the translation below, we can see that Microsoft Copilot finds that it's women who served US forces stationed in Korea or UN troops after World War II. So there is different instances being answered by each model. In education, especially, say if a student is using this to AI generate a response to a discussion question in class or something like that, this kind of takes back the population of the country you're in or the language that you're using and repeats that back to you. So you're kind of repeating your own biases back to you if you use this for your class discussion questions. So I thought that was interesting. Next slide, please. Thank you. And here we can also see, we asked about US military presence in Korea. On the English side, we say it is generally, the overall sentiment remains positive. There's a positive English response, whereas the Korean query kind of talks about how recently the presence has been a controversial issue. Generally, the best way to do this is to run like tons and tons of queries and kind of see what the differences are. But since I think I've been trying to do this for about 1.5 years, and every single time I've run this query on Copilot specifically, it answers like this. ChatGPT, which does not search the internet unless you tell it to, does not have a similar bias, but it is interesting to note that Microsoft Copilot, which is such a big model and will probably be integrated into more specialized learning models, has this type of bias. Next slide, please. And thank you. That is all.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our next speaker, representing the Japanese side of the Japan America Student Conference. Please go ahead.
Hello again. I'm Mayu, and after Emile's presentation, I'm kind of nervous, but I will talk about the overview of AI in Japan. Next slide, please. So what does the Japanese think about AI, or how do you think AI in your home country? Next slide, please. The famous movie Terminator might reflect on how the West sees AI. Or next slide, please. In Japan, we have Doraemon and Astro Boy. How many of you know these movies? Yeah, I guess almost all of you. We see AI and robotics very familiar and friendly way. Next slide, please. So then how does our Japanese government see the AI? In Japan, we have this Society 5.0 that was made in 2016 and currently developed by the government throughout the past 10 years. And some researchers describe Japan as like a techno-utopian. And it is important to note that in Japan, AI and technology are thought to be the most efficient way to tackle aging population, depopulation in rural areas, and lack of labor, especially in the agriculture sector. Next slide, please. And when we evaluate the pros and cons of AI regulations as a student perspective, although regulation creates safety and reliability, there will be a trade-off between the technological development and the regulation itself. So therefore, combining the both ethical standards, regulation, and promotion policies for new startup companies are important to be used together. Next slide, please. So what are the challenges of AI industry in Japan? Next slide, please. So right now, we think that domestic AI is required for Japan. And the reason behind of this is there is lack of Japanese language learning model. And currently existing generative AI, although it became better and better, it lacks full understand of the complexity of the Japanese language itself. So this Chinese character says "aimai." It means ambiguity, but mostly in Japanese language, we have a lot of indirect expressions to express feelings and emotions. So I think that's kind of like the hurdle too. And next is national security issues. As a student and going, I think that we think that dependence on foreign AI products can create a risk. So that is also a big problem. But also like the government says how Japanese want to have the Japanese version of GAFA. And I think we kind of see AI as a growing sector in the economy. And also, lastly, Japanese strength and AI. So Japanese faces big social challenges that like I said earlier, but at the same time, because of the unique characteristic of our geology, like natural disasters, we can implement those new technology into the society and become like a model case for other countries too. And also Japanese robotics and precision machinery are highly regarded worldwide. Next slide, please. So what are the pros and cons of regulations on use of generative AI in Japanese universities? Next slide, please. Um, Pros, the increase in learning efficiency because we can do profiling and labeling. And also it helps the teachers to educate the students more efficiently. However, on the other hand, there are a lot of limitations, such as there are lack of emotional engagement, and it is also a disadvantage for second language speakers because some Japanese also have a hard time like pronouncing English in a way. So still, I think it is very hard for the AI itself to detect the Japanese pronunciation of the English language. And also, like Emile have done, we think that there will be reproduction of cultural stereotypes if only Japanese sources are cited, and especially because Japan is a homogeneous society, and we need to be careful in terms of like enhancing cultural understanding in those aspects. And for regulations, because currently the government don't really have like a regular like overall regulation toward the generative AI use. It's up to the professors and the teachers to decide how to use the AI. So we think that it is important for like the government making the initiative to create guidelines for utilizing generative AI for education, and also tailored to students' development stages. Next slide, please. And so how do you, as students leaders in a cross-cultural setting, use AI to facilitate communication and collaboration? Um, so one thing I think is, although there are a lot of problems still with like biased information that generative AI can give to each student, still I think that it is a pathway to approach to different sources, and especially because being a student in Japan and we learn from textbooks, we don't really get to know like a lot of sources from other countries. So knowing those perspectives can like help build up the communication in different cultures. Next slide, please. And these are like the three AIs that like the JECs kind of used during the university life. And next slide, please. Thank you for listening. And the last slide will be the research articles. Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much. I learned a lot from that. Let's move on to Korea now, and we're going to hear from the American perspective first.
Hi, everyone, again. My name is Valerie. I'm hoping to give a good representation of our American side with kind of a mix of international studies issues as well as art and identity. Next slide, please. So a bit on the US perspective, we've emboldened here the specific issues that the US State Department kind of highlighted in a press briefing. So a majority of these issues that the United States is interested when it comes to AI is like sustainable development, mitigating risks, ensuring responsibility within people that are using AI, and also in making sure that it's very inclusive and it's respecting both the rights of the technology and the people utilizing it. Next slide, please. So kind of a focus on this presentation is the American perspective. So this was research done by the Pew Research Center in 2023. They've kind of highlighted from a group of teens in the US from ages 13 to 17. A bit about how they've either heard about ChatGPT, how they use it in their home life, and as well as a student. So you'll see here that a lot of people find it acceptable to be researching new topics and kind of starting maybe a literature review or getting into a topic, and how ChatGPT can be used as a resource in that regard. As well as almost half and half on solving math problems and utilizing it in more of a homework setting. And then you'll see a large gap, though, of students find it not acceptable in creating like essays and using it in more of that creative atmosphere. Next slide, please. So from the student perspective on more of our EC American side, within the arts, we find that it's an overall negative output. there's a lot of issues that can come into play, like job displacement, income instability for artists, ethical dilemmas of stealing sources and AI kind of being utilized. Then we also have the issue of how do we place value on AI art, and how does that come into a conversation as well? And are we devaluing human creativity when there's a real large lack of human involvement within the AI atmosphere? And then how are we regulating and creating transparency? So this could be kind of on Instagram and different social media outlets. If people are posting AI art, how are they then reflecting that this is created by AI, or is this being created by a human? Within a little bit more of the job market, AI is not going to only eliminate lower income jobs, but it also will have an impact on white collar jobs, people within the offices, companies using ChatGPT or AI more to supplement that work, and finding those jobs maybe less important. So how is we, either as a country, through the government, how are we subsidizing and kind of making sure that we're not leaving anyone behind as we are shifting more into an AI realm? And then within the environment, an interesting fact that I don't think a lot of people know is the impact ChatGPT has on the environment. Every question is then kind of like, 500 milliliters of water per interaction. That's about a water bottle every 2 to 5 questions you're just kind of interacting within ChatGPT. So as we're utilizing these resources more, how are we also making sure they don't have a detrimental impact on the environment? And this is kind of, oh, sorry. I had just a quote from Microsoft there, just that they reported a 34% increase of global water usage. Thank you. Next slide. So how did our ECs kind of use AI throughout our development of our programming and kind of outreach within our organization, as well as just kind of within our own realm of what we study? So we found it very helpful, ChatGPT, to utilize in summarizing documents, email templates. Obviously, we have an outreach with Korea as well as the United States, so it's very helpful with translating. And kind of finding those different language nuances can also be very helpful. And then we also, of course, utilize the knowledge of our Korean ECs too in that respect. Learning support, understanding more complex topics, AI being able to kind of create synonyms to understand different things and placing it in a different way that might be more understandable for people. Creative inspiration, idea generation, things like that, as well as entertainment. A new one that I just found out from one of our other ECs was therapy usage. People will connect with ChatGPT that way, and it could make it a bit easier for people that maybe don't have insurance in the States or are studying abroad and they don't have access to mental health. Utilizing ChatGPT in that regard to either have different sources of resources, as well as translation. And I've also definitely used it for travel planning because it is great in that regard too. Next slide. So something that I'm really passionate about, as well as our ECs, is how we're using AI with tackling climate change. So Al Gore, after COP28, which I believe was in Egypt, had done a statement on his usage of AI within his business practice. So this is kind of a bit about how AI in his business is being incorporated to hold more countries accountable. If you could go to the next slide. These are some photos I took at COP29. So his company is called Climate Trace, and it basically measures GHG emissions from different countries. So this is a great resource not only for students to be able to track exact outputs, because it is an entire map of a country. So students can then be able to use this type of resource to understand maybe what state in the US is outputting the most emissions, if this is a company, a private sector, or a public sector. But one way AI has been utilized in this realm is holding everyone more accountable. So an example he gave in this aspect was that ship regulations and ship emission outputs were largely not being all accounted for, as people could use things like GPS and satellites to not represent the exact output or what company they were falling under. So AI has been utilized in that regard to kind of help track more of everything. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. And I hope that also shows both the positive and the negative effects of AI, because I don't think it is totally negative. And I do think it's more important that we recognize the good and the bad, and then we're starting to understand that it's not going away, and we put factors in place that just make it as ethical as possible as we transition to this. So thank you. And my sources are on the next slide.
All right, thank you very much. Next, last but not least, we're going to go to Somin for the Korean perspective. And you guys, Somin actually was the only Korean executive committee member who could make it this week. So she did a lot of this research just all by herself. So she's very brave to be up here and presenting it. So I just wanted to let you guys know that she worked really hard, pretty much by herself on this project. So go ahead, Somin.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Somin Hwang again from KASC 18, representing Korea today. It is a great honor to be here at this symposium on trilateral cooperation between Korea, Japan, and the United States. Today, I want to explore the role of artificial intelligence in fostering cultural understanding among our nations. Next slide, please. To begin, let me shortly share my experience. We, as a Korean students, use AI on various ways. I also frequently use AI in my daily life. For instance, AI has helped me plan trips and navigate cultural differences that traditional dictionaries or translation tools couldn't explain. One memorable example was when a Japanese friend texted me, "Naniwaro tennen." At first, I was completely confused because translation tools didn't provide me any meaningful explanation. Fortunately, with the help of AI, I discovered that it was a Kansai dialect expression. This experience not only allowed me to understand the praise, but also gave me deeper insight into the cultural nuance behind it. Next slide. Yeah. Now I'll show you the current state of AI adoption in Korea. As of December 2024, an estimated 6.82 million people in Korea use ChatGPT. Considering Korea's population of approximately 52 millions, it is a truly remarkable figure. Among university students, AI adoption is even more significant. According to a survey conducted by the platform 아바천국, the percentage of students using generative AI for academic purposes soared from 25% in 2023 to an impressive 78% in 2024. This sharp increase underscores how deeply AI has become embedded in higher education. For the next slide. Even universities themselves are recognizing that value of AI. A survey conducted by the Korean Council of University Education revealed that 83.2% of university presidents responded positively to generative AI. They highlighted its potential to enhance efficiency across various areas, including education, administration, and research. This demonstrates the growing institutional embrace of AI as a transformative tool. For the next slide. With the increasing use of AI, it is also playing an important role in fostering cultural exchange. A compelling example is the Korea-Turkey Cultural Exchange Workshop, which utilized generative AI and augmented reality AR. In this workshop, participants from Korea's Seocheon neighborhood use AI tools to create digital artworks reflecting their personal lives and the unique characteristics of their surroundings. These stories were visually represented and shared through AI displays. Meanwhile, participants in Turkey create crafts media arts based on their own experiences in Ankara, employing similar AI tools. This interactive exchange allowed participants from both countries to experience each other countries in a deeply personal and immersive way, facilitated by cutting-edge AI and VR technologies. Such initiatives provide an inspiring blueprint for future trilateral cultural exchanges among Korea, Japan, and the US. By integrating generative AI, VR, and AR, we can explore innovative ways to deepen mutual understanding and bring our cultures closer together. In Korea, the rapid adoption of generative AI illustrates its potential to enhance both education and the cultural exchange. Initiatives like the Korea-Turkey workshop highlights how technology can break down barriers, deepen understanding, and bring people closer, regardless of physical distance. For the next slides. As students from Korea, Japan, and the US, we are uniquely positioned to lead the way in using AI responsibly and inclusively. By working together, we can shape a future where technology strengthens trilateral relations, foster innovations, and promotes cultural appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. That was really, really interesting. You all touched on a lot of really interesting, sorry, I don't know what that sound is. You touched on a lot of really, really interesting topics. And before, I have some formal questions prepared, but before we go into that, I really want to hear from JASC about how your conference as student leaders, how do you use AI and engage with AI? Because Valerie talked a little bit about it, how KASC uses it, but I'm really curious, how does the Japanese Executive Committee or the American Executive Committee for our Japan conference use it or not use it?
So for the JAC side, we have to write tons of emails with a lot of honorifics, and because of that, we use a lot of ChatGPT to like check whether it is polite enough, it is okay to send it, and that's how I use it. But another way it was kind of interesting was when we had to create our RT, we had to put the explanation sentences, right? But then there was one EC that made the sentences, but when I read it, it felt a bit kind of like one-way direction, not neutral. So I first told him that maybe you should change like these parts. But then I came up that, oh, maybe I should ask ChatGPT if it can like detect the neutrality. And eventually it actually did. And I think like that was kind of a way to, back up my opinion toward him, but also he will be able to like understand why those words cannot it kind of not make it neutral. And I think that was like an interesting way to use it. But still, I don't know if I can like still rely on ChatGPT for the next time too.
Yeah, I think Mayu had a great answer already and answered a lot of the ways that we use it for the conference. I think on the American side, something that we had, I think every single JASC EC delegation has, and probably on the KASC and JASC side as well, is that there is a little bit of a language barrier when we're speaking to each other. And there are a lot of documents, official documents, things that JAC needs to send to us or the other way around. And we kind of found that, we can't really read Japanese very well, so we can't really understand what's in the documents. So we started using AI generated tools to quickly translate what's in the 50-page documents that we get sent. The other thing is that we kind of realized that it might be more helpful to maybe be able to express our ideas in our preferred language so that each person gets heard. So we've also used AI translation tools in our communications to each other in order to kind of streamline what we mean. Google Translate isn't really that helpful in that respect. And so what I found is that running it through ChatGPT multiple times, kind of checking on the translation, because of course sometimes ChatGPT is wrong, and then using my minimal Japanese knowledge, kind of really helped me kind of consolidate what I wanted to say when sending messages in Japanese. And I think that kind of goes for the ECs in general as well.
That's really interesting. I wondered if KASC, if you would like to elaborate at all on any of the thing you had in that one slide on how you guys utilize it.
Maybe for me, I also use a lot to send emails because I'm not a native for English and I don't know what nuance is I'm getting for these type of sentences. So I really use it for my mails or sometimes I also ask some sentences that would be really shown as attractive for the cat to marketing the casting. So which sentence would be more attractive to some publics? So I think I use that way normally.
Great. All right. Well, that I'm also curious if you guys could expand a little bit on how you think that AI could change the way students from different cultural backgrounds learn and interact from each other. Do you see any implications for the future of how AI might continue to be used in either your personal setting or in a classroom setting to help with communication across cultures? And anyone who feels they have a good answer can answer this.
I think that AI, in one sense, offers an unique opportunity in terms of accessibility. You might not know someone that speaks a specific language, but you are able to interact with ChatGPT in that way and kind of get a conversation going, or perhaps an explanation on why this word is this word rather than this word. And Somin and I had a conversation about regret, the word in Korean, and there's two different ways you can say it, but there's two different levels. And if I didn't know Korean people to ask that type of question, ChatGPT kind of also offers that opportunity. But I also think that an over reliance on it is a really negative and detrimental impact for language learning in general. It's kind of a sense like once you start using Google Translate or like Papago in Korean, then how do you stop and how do you have that accountability for yourself? So I definitely think there's a balance and there's a very thin line that students should be able to utilize this technology.
Go ahead, Emile.
Yeah, so in terms of student communication, I think it also kind of captures the nuance, the cultural nuance, kind of like KASC uses it, in the sense that like occasionally in my personal usage of using AI for communications with the conference, I write something in a big mess of formal and casual Japanese language with some grammar errors. And then I go to ChatGPT and I'm like, make this formal because I'm sending it to everyone. And it it will do that and capture that nuance. Or on the reverse side, if I'm trying to translate a Japanese message, I can kind of, although I can kind of tell whether it's formal or casual, ChatGPT kind of helps capture the nuances in the Japanese language, especially that are a lot more present in Japanese than they are in English. So I think in terms of cross-cultural communication, that's something to keep in mind. Although I don't think we'll be walking around with massive headsets anytime soon. I tried the Apple headset and it was kind of painful. Um, I think that eventually real-time speaking and communication, especially if you rely on Zoom and virtual tools more, as all conferences here do, will be positively influenced by the use of AI. And I think that's really helpful.
Go ahead, Mayu.
Maybe this answer won't really go back to like communication wise, but I think like it, but like when I was researching AI, what fascinated me is how like there's a lot of things to innovate in this sector, and I think like creating the like robot and AI technologies, if each countries they create a lot of new stuffs and then like those products go to different countries, I think it would be a unique way to communicate with robots, and also like knowing that, oh, this robot is made by South Korea. Wow. Like those kind of things, like not K-pop, but like, like K-robot or I don't know. But I think those like, those kind of shared technology and innovation and like how we come together to like creating better world, those kind of things might be a really good thing. Yes.
You do not have to add anything unless you have something to add.
Yeah, me too. I totally agree with the three issues here, and like it really helps me to understand totally different cultures because nowadays I'm staying in France and the culture there is almost opposite for me. Like so Western cultures and even I'm not even I don't have to take off my shoes in my home, for example. And like first when I first arrived there, it was so difficult to get familiar with it. But I can ask ChatGPT what do I have to be careful for my host family, or how can I be not rude for them? For example, on the table manner, I have to hang my place my two hands here or like that. So it could foster me to be have some good relationship with them, but as Valerie already said, it's to rely on is really, really, really dangerous. So because if I always ask ChatGPT to translate my all words, I can't even say any words in French at all. So I think I also have to develop my own skills too. That's really important, and I really have to keep in my mind. That's it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's really interesting. Some of these uses of AI are not things that had actually occurred to me as ways I could use AI. So I think we're in a unique position to learn a lot from the current generation about tools that we could utilize. I do want to get to audience questions, so I'm just going to ask one more additional question. Because I want to think a little bit about the educational systems. So I'm really interested in how, in your opinions, on how you think education systems in the United States, Japan, and Korea should prepare students for the use of AI in schools and the workplace. Do you think that they, a lot we've talked a little bit, and maybe you can touch on this, on the type of rules and restrictions universities and high schools have about the use of AI? Do you think it is good to have those restrictions? Do you think teachers should be embracing AI or banning it? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So from this year, I heard that the elementary school, middle school, high school in Korea started to use the AI textbook. So I was so shocking that they can use the digital book in like public schools, and I'm not that on the positive position on using digital only the digital things in schools, maybe because I think the experience that we write on the exact paper is really important to have some like the common sense or some basic background knowledge. So I'm 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 not that positive. I'm I I'm not thinking that positive way, but it will be really efficient to have some AI textbook because I can match on my own level and I can follow what I want and what I need, and the textbook already know what I know and what do I need to like study more. And but anyway, I think all of the studies goes to AI would not be that helpful for the students to study. Yeah, that is my opinion.
Thank you for sharing. Who would like to go next? Emile.
It's on. I think that in the case of the US education system, there's two considerations. First is the one that I think is at the forefront of everyone's mind, and that is kind of like cheating using ChatGPT or other AI tools. And I think the problem is that all this does is exacerbate existing issues within our US education system. Basically, if students don't see the point in doing an assignment, why would they do it when they have a tool available to them that can do it for them. And I think that the US education system hasn't caught up since probably the Industrial Revolution in terms of the way we structure our system and the way we go about learning. I think universities are a little bit better in this case, and I think that certain high schools are better than others in kind of focusing more on towards the future. But I think in general, we need to focus on why AI is being used the way it is. Why are students cheating in the first place? What makes it so that they don't see the value in assignments or education in general? And what can we do to kind of change that? I think is the most important thing, because aside from teachers are a lot of teachers I see are kind of looking at it as, these students are using AI and they're never going to learn to do essays. If you are assigning them books that they don't care about every month, then maybe they would do it if they are actually interested in the subject. So obviously that's kind of like a thin line. There are some things that you have to learn that you don't want to, but I think that's one way to think about it. The other way is kind of usage or AI integration into schools in terms of learning about AI and how it's used. So we can see that in universities, for instance, I think UC Irvine uses ZotGPT. UC Berkeley has pro subscription to Perplexity, like certain things like that, where schools have been using and integrating AI tools. But we can also note that this is true for both colleges and this is true for both K to 12. Certain schools are better at teaching AI tools and are better at integrating them at others. There are more initiatives, there are more teachers who know about them. And I think that this kind of speaks to a big inequality in the US education system, that certain students will be more prepared than others. And this has been true for decades now, but I think AI will almost kind of make it worse in terms of kind of the students who understand how the AI processes work, especially in politics and in diplomacy and in their day-to-day lives in work, and who understand the reasoning behind the models, how the models work, how it should be used, and the students who generally just haven't been exposed to AI that much at all. So I think those are kind of like the two considerations in the education system.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to weigh in, or go ahead, Mayu?
So in terms of education, well, I have a lot of thoughts on like Japanese education, but I think like having AI into high school education or even like elementary students using, I think there is a really big risk in terms of like how we capture the historical things that happen between different countries. And in that sense, well, like when I was in high school, teachers said that don't use Wikipedia. You don't know who wrote those. But now like AIs are like, oh, those data, we don't even know who wrote those. So I mean, I think those kind of difference, like definitely the teachers have to control students' usage of AI. And definitely, I think this is like a good turning point for also like the Japanese government and also like the each institutions to think what kind of education we want to deliver for the Japanese students, because especially until like high school we don't really write a lot of like academic essays or like read a lot of research papers to criticize something. We don't do that. We just remember like what happened in the history. What's this place? So in terms of that, I think we like reconstructing like what kind of skills in the future generation, especially like Japanese people living in the depopulation society needs by using those AIs will really affect like a good positive way in how we create the society too.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I want AI to do my laundry, not make art for me, right? All right, let's open it up to questions from the audience. We're going to start with Layra, and Yujun, could you bring the mic up?
Thank you. So this is open to everyone, but it's mostly for like Valerie and Mayu because of your guys' majors, being in the arts. But I was just sort of wondering, like, what are your opinions on the usage of AI in your particular industries, especially like with like vocal performance, like um, pitch correction, those kinds of like technologies, or like technologies where like they're creating or like dictating like new they're being used in like stage direction, that kind of thing. Like I'm just really curious your opinions on how that affects the performance of art.
Um, Thank you for your question. So I have like two opinions. First, I think it is quite like fun time with AIs because, for example, my professor, like the head of my university, is Hirata Oriza, who is famous for android theater. So the actors and the android actually communicate, and like that's kind of like a new society on the theater stage. So that's kind of like one way to collaborate with AI. And another thing is I quite feel risk in terms of AI like generative AI creating like videos or like more entertaining contents on YouTube or like online services, because theater is something that you go to a theater box and like you kind of have those human to human interaction, and that's kind of like what it's mostly important is. But then like if you have more and more like entertaining stuffs on like your iPad or anywhere, like I fear that there will still be like connections between human to human in those theaters that are really important, and that's what I think.
With more of the music side and like music composition, music is inherently mathematical. So I think that AI can really be utilized in that sense. And it takes away a lot of opportunities from like my friends that are like composers. So I think it's a really big fear for people in the music industry, because there's going to be such a lack of human emotion and also like job displacement in that sense. But there's also, you know, a very big fear within vocalists as well, because of things like like pitch control and like pitch correcting, auto tune. That's what it is. So in that sense, really anyone can be a singer in that one regard. And that, you know, I sing opera and classical music, so it's a bit more difficult because we don't have a lot of the tech. And in that realm, we're largely like we kind of like prehistoric, and we follow a lot of rules of like no microphones and things like that. So that industry is very, very hard to evolve. And there's, you know, positives and negatives with that. But I would say with a lot more people that are singing contemporary music, it's a really big fear, because I think that that industry can be moved to AI. And it's a fear that for everyone that I go to school with, and we have like 200 plus singers, of how are we going to be used and how are we going to be effective in society and have those human connections too.
Thank you so much. All right, next questions. We're going to go to Kieran in the front.
Hi, yeah, this question is mostly directed towards Valerie. Early in your presentation, you mentioned that the US has kind of come out and said that they do want to focus on using AI for particularly food scarcity and environmental issues. Coming from the China America Student Program, our focus is of course in China, and China has actually started to embrace AI, particularly for environmental tracking and carbon emissions monitoring, which you mentioned kind of in the COP section of your presentation. I'd like to know your opinion or kind of insight on what lessons or challenges do you foresee in replicating this form of AI or climate tracking in other countries. You can either make this a global perspective or kind of focus on trilateral, whichever you think is kind of the best.
I would say within the US perspective, with like government to government, I would say that largely US, South Korea, and Japan would probably be more open to that type of relationship in terms of tracking and things like that. And I think why like former Vice President Al Gore, his kind of industry is so successful is because it is private. So there's not that necessarily like government to government type of relationship. So I foresee that to be one big issue. You know, when you look at like engagement like COP, this past COP was really difficult because a lot of countries were not wanting to step up in some regard, and like financing was a really big topic. So just in general, things like emission tracking, you know, we really need to have a multilateral cooperation, and we just don't have that. And I don't really see that happening within the next 4 years as well. I think, well, in the United States, I'm assuming we're going to pull out of the Paris Agreement. So I think that's really going to impact how we're having these multilateral and like healthy connections. And I also think, you know, there's an issue of national security. How can countries trust one another when they're asking satellites to be tracking certain things? How does that country know that they're only tracking emissions and they're only, you know, trying to find these like climate sources? And I think it's a lot of trust that we're having to put on other countries too. And I can see that as more as a trilateral trust between our countries, but I understand how other countries would be less likely to kind of engage in that type of relationship. So I hope that kind of answers that question.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna go next questions. All right, we're gonna go over here to Haruka. And then we probably have time for just one more question, so I will do my best to get
Hi,
somebody.
I'd like to know these three countries can represent like people or even like China, sorry, the Korea and Japan, like trilateral or bilateral kind of perspective. I'd like to know how these countries kind of collaborated or kind of to create a joint, for example, a summit or kind of program on AI perspective from kind of you guys' perspective. Thank you.
Why don't you go first, Somin?
Yeah. Like as I mentioned before, I think the virtual programming like the Korea and Turkey did it as a cultural exchange would be work for also for US, Korea and Japan relationship because I will be in Korea and she'll be in US and she'll be in Japan. We can all show our own daily life during the using with AI or VR or AR things, and we can just share with each other so that we can all know the others' cultural things. So it'll be the great cultural exchange experience for each other, and it'll. I believe that the culture thing have a big power for the diplomacy, the international relations also. So it'll affect a lot, for my opinion.
Emile, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think yesterday, JASC and KASC and JASC kind of learned a little bit about like the recent Camp David summit and how leaders of each country kind of met to kind of talk about the ethical and legal concerns of AI. And since then, there have been a couple of other trilateral meetings at different summits like the G7 Hiroshima. But there, I think in general, something to note is that although a lot of these summits have kind of focused on, like G7 Hiroshima focused on kind of promoting transparency and tracking within development of AI models and some things like that. Although, like, I think part of this collaboration, and this is my personal opinion, is partially because of these countries' viewpoints towards China. And I think that the US in particular is more willing to share or be transparent with certain portions of their technology with other countries, primarily because of China. So I don't know if that's like the most ethical or right answer to that question, but I think having that kind of shared thing in common has made these three countries more likely to hold themselves to their promise of ethical transparency and honesty regarding AI in order to help build up each other's industries. Like I think in the expert panel earlier, I kind of asked a similar question where the US is right now kind of the leader in AI innovation. It wants to stay that way, whether it's the Biden or the Trump administration. And I think it's kind of playing this game of like, kind of how much do I share with outside nations and outside countries. And I think focusing on transparency and collaboration kind of occurs because there are some other countries that our alliance is kind of worried about.
All right, we have time for one more question. Sorry, I'm gonna go to. Oh, I'm gonna go to Ainsley in the back.
Hi. I have a question for Mayu, actually. Um, and that is, do you think Japan's portrayal in cyberpunk fiction, such as Blade Runner or Ghost in the Shell, has had any influence on real world expectations of its technological capabilities?
That's that's a big question. I think yes, in a sense of how we kind of accept technology in our ordinary days and normal lives. So I think, yes, definitely there is a big influence. However, do we really believe that those society will come in like near future? I don't think we do. So in a sense, we also kind of are like realistic in a sense. But what I think is that I think like technology wise, maybe this answer might kind of like go in a different direction, but what I think is Japan, although we are acceptable for technology, still I think there will be a lot of difficulties in terms of AI or like trying to manage a lot of data because some of the population will have difficulties or like will have their own opinions of opening their like personal data to the government or the companies and stuff. So I think in that sense, it will be a bit like a difficult ways to create that world in reality. But still, I think in a sense we are more optimistic in terms of those kind of technology.
Well, thank you very much. That was a really interesting question. It's getting me thinking. But we're out of time, so I'd like everyone to give a round of applause for our student speakers.